Welcome to Garden Delights. I'm Susan Howington, Family Consumer Science Agent with the Henry County Extension partnership with the University of Georgia. We have a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about tomatoes. We're going to be making rice stuffed tomatoes. We're going to hear from Frank Hancock, our Agriculture and Natural Resource Agent. He's going to tell you all this good stuff about how to grow those tomatoes, and hopefully it's going to entice you to grow your own. We'll see you back in just a little bit, and we're going to talk more about those tomatoes. We're going to talk about tomatoes today, and we're also going to be making rice stuffed tomatoes. But let's talk about these lovely tomatoes we have. I don't know about you, but I always look forward to the garden season because one of my favorite things out of that garden is this tomato. Now this is like a medium-sized tomato, so a medium-sized tomato is about 30 calories. So you can see 30 calories, you can eat a lot of these and not worry about your calories. So tomatoes are very good for us. They have vitamin A, vitamin C. The vitamin C in one medium tomato is just like a half of an orange. So you're getting a lot of good vitamin C from this tomato. It's also good in potassium. It's low in saturated fat, fat-free, and it's also, like I said, very low in calories. So the tomato, you can see, is a great choice. You could eat it like an apple if you wanted to. But you want to select it good. So when we're going to select it to eat it almost like an apple, you want to make sure it's firm, it's shiny, you don't see any bruises or blemishes on it, because that's probably telling you the tomato's getting ready to decay. Now let's say that when you're buying them at the grocery store, you have a chance to pick them up and look at them, and you want to do that because a lot of times they do get bruised. But once you get them home, remember this: before you start to eat those tomatoes, you need to wash them. Tomatoes they need to be firm when you're picking them out at the grocery store, but not only that, when you have your own garden, you want to make sure that you're picking them when they're almost ripe or pretty close to being ripe. Now, if you pick a tomato when it's a little bit of green to it, it can ripen as you let it set out on your counter. Let's talk about that storage. Storage tomatoes, you don't put them in the refrigerator. If you put them in the refrigerator, you're taking away the taste, that wonderful taste of that tomato. It becomes flat. And it doesn't have that aroma, that smell of a tomato. So you want to make sure that you are putting in the right places for storage. When I say storage, that means on a countertop, away from sunlight. And this will ripen even more. And it will do better if you leave it out on your counter and not in the refrigerator. Now, when you need to put it in the refrigerator is when you think you're not going to be able to eat them in time before they go bad. This is before they go bad. Then you want to put them in your refrigerator to have them prolong that time just a little bit longer. But I will tell you that storage, so that it keeps a good while, but the most important thing is they freeze wonderfully. So if you want to freeze tomatoes, or if you want to make them into canning, they can wonderful. You can take them back out in the wintertime, eat them either frozen out of the freezer, or you can take them out of a canning jar and make spaghetti or whatever you want to make as far as that. And they're so versatile. I mean, people can eat them like they are. You can slice them, make a tomato sandwich like everybody's kind of known for as our BLTs in the summertime, but they're also good to make other things out there. You can make salsa. So just look at other varieties of recipes out there that you can use your tomatoes to make them go longer. You can can them and freeze them, which is going to make them go longer. Now, sometimes when you're using recipes, it's important to know that a pound of tomatoes, if you see a recipe, that's about 3 medium, and this is a medium size, or 4 small. So if you're seeing something that says a pound, then you want to make sure that you're buying about the same amount. Now, a bushel is going to be like 1 bushel. This is going to be like about 15 to 20 quarts of tomatoes. So if you can imagine quarts of tomatoes, then you would know that that's what you're going to get for that bushel. So you can see they kind of add up when it comes to a bushel, but just for a pound, you're looking at 3 medium. So just keep that in mind. So now that you know more about that tomato, and I'm hoping that you hadn't started your garden, you will start one, because tomatoes also can go into the fall. And you'll be that lucky one in that neighborhood that's still eating those tomatoes while maybe someone is not. And also it can keep your grocery bill costs down when you're growing your own food. So think about that when you're thinking about these tomatoes. And now it's still a good time to go and buy those tomato plants and plant those. So we're going to come back and we're going to talk more about how to make that rice stuffed tomatoes. And so we'll see you back in just a little bit.
Here we are, springtime now, so it's time to get our tomatoes set out. We're trying to do a few things this year to combat some of the problems we've had in the last couple of years. Last year was really a wet year. A lot of people lost tomatoes. So what we've got here is we built this little structure to try to keep, it'll keep the direct rainfall off of the tomatoes. We've got a drip system in here that we can water them with. You know, this also can protect it from hail if we have a hailstorm. It'll let you get started a little bit earlier. If it's cool, you can put sides up on it and close it in. We're using white plastic here. Some of your clear plastic, which actually still looks white, will generate maybe a little bit more heat underneath here than this does. We've got some other structures built out around that, you know, we're seeing the temperature rise in there to get us some warm soil earlier in the season. So that's what this does. About 1 o'clock, the shade that I'm standing in right here will move over these tomato plants. So we get a little bit of shade in the afternoon, couple hours of shade from about 1 to 3, somewhere in that neighborhood. You can play with the direction of it and work on how your shade works out. So that's basically what we're trying to do here. We use these posts, the structure we got, so we can bring our strings through here. So as these plants grow and get bigger, we can start tying them up on the strings, and we can continue to add strings as the plants get bigger. We dug a big hole in some pretty hard red clay here, so we got us a little bit of garden soil, a little bit of compost out of the compost pile, mixed that with some of the soil that was already here, and came up with a pretty good mixture to, we hope, to grow these tomatoes in. So that's kind of what we got going on here. We use some newspaper to mulch with, to try to control some of the weeds, and then we top that off with just a real light layer of pine straw. We didn't want to get that too thick, but so that's what we have in this deal here. This structure, like I say, it also can take you a little further into the fall because it'll protect them from those little frosts that we get out there in November, you know, and it'll carry a little longer. So hopefully with this structure we get started a little bit earlier in the spring. We run them a little bit later into the fall, and it's something that that homeowners can do in their backyard too, because it's gotten pretty hard to grow some of these tomatoes because of the weather we've been having. Either it's 100 degrees or it's 50 degrees and nothing in between except rain or drought. So hopefully we can control some of that with this structure. We're also looking at some grafted tomatoes. These are not grafted that we planted here today, but doing a little research on that, that seems to be growing, especially with organic gardeners, where you can get an heirloom tomato that is grafted onto some rootstock that is really disease resistant. And I think that also can play pretty well in the homeowner market. The plants become a whole lot more expensive, where if you're paying $4 for a plant now, you may pay $8 for a grafted plant. But what you get, if you're not capable of rotating your crops to have disease-free soil, then you get disease-resistant rootstocks that are not susceptible to these soil-borne problems that we have, and root problems, that sort of thing. And then you get your heirloom tomato growing on top of it, and it also increases the vigor of the heirloom tomato. It wants to grow a little faster and produce a little bit better than it normally would. So there's a lot of promise in that. We'll talk about that again in another session, but we are doing a little research to see how that might play into the homeowner market. There's a couple of companies now, I think they're out in California, that are offering plants for sale, but I'm trying to figure out if I'm smart enough to graft some of them myself, but we'll let you know in the future. But that's about what we're doing today. We're getting our tomatoes planted. You know, we talked last year about a little bit about diseases and about just the general health of the tomatoes as they get started growing. So here we're talking about how to get off to a good start and try to get our crop going. And so now we're going to go inside and see what Susan is fixing for us today.
We're talking about tomatoes today, and we're going to be making rice stuffed tomatoes. So for this recipe, it'll serve about 8 people, and I've already pre-done some things for the recipe, and I'll go over that with you. But first we want to talk about the tomatoes. It takes 8 because I said 8 servings. So what I've done is I've already carved out 8 of the tomatoes, and you can see I sliced it, and I'm going to pull out all the middle part of it. So that's the meat part of that tomato. But what I want to do is show you how easy it is to do. If you don't have a melon scoop, you can use a spoon, but the first thing you want to do is just cut off the end of that tomato. This is going to be my little area. And what I like to do is I like to just go around the outer edge of that tomato just to kind of get me started so I can scoop it out. And you don't want to push your knife too far down in there because you don't want to puncture a hole at the bottom of it. So I'm just going to kind of go around, kind of like you would do a grapefruit in a way. So I'm just going to kind of go around, and then I have a melon scoop, and I'm just going to take it, and I'm just going to work it, and it just seems to work better if I just do a little bit of that cutting around the outer side of it. So you can see I'm going to pull this out, and I'm going to still pull out some more. Now, I'm putting this in a bowl. My tomato is also washed. So if you wanted to take these tomatoes and take the carving that I'm taking out of, the meat part of it, you could make juice from this tomato. You could do other things besides just throwing it away. So just remember that. You can make some good tomato juice if you like tomato juice. So I'm just going to keep carving. Now the one thing the recipe is going to do is to tell you to do this first. And the reason why is, you know, tomatoes have a lot of juice to them. So we want to make sure that we get the seeds and get all the meat part, because we want to have a lot of good area for that stuffing to go into. So you're looking at this, and you can see that just from there, that all that juice. So what you want to do is you want to turn the tomatoes upside down, and you want to let all the juice, as much as you can, kind of go out of the tomatoes, because that's going to help it when the stuffing gets into it. You don't have a lot of water. So that's what I've done right here. So we've got 8 of those tomatoes, and then you're going to need some type of dish to put it in, and I already have a dish here, and I'm going to move this around just a little bit to get it to where I can put my dish in the center. And you want to spray it with some kind of non-stick spray, and this just keeps it for easy cleaning, and also when you're working with your tomatoes when you're getting ready to take them out for your to serve them on your plates. So what you're going to need to do is, I just like to line them up in my casserole dish, and it's already been sprayed a little bit with some spray. And so this is going to make 8, but I'm going to tell you how to make the rice mixture, and you will see that I'm going to have probably a little bit of rice mixture left over. So you probably could go even further and make this into 10 if you wanted to, but the recipe is going to say for 8 servings. So we've got 8 of our tomatoes. They all have been cut off. They've all been taken out the center, and so now they're ready to go. So what do we have to put in the center? It is the rice, and it has, well, you also need 1 tablespoon of oil. So I'm going to back up and tell you that, because you're going to stir fry some things. So you're going to do 4 finely chopped green onions. And if you don't like green onions, you could use some other type of onion, but you need about 1/2 cup. So that's what our goal is. And then you're going to take 2 cloves of garlic, and that needs to be minced also. And it's going to need 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 1/2 teaspoon of oregano, ground up oregano, crushed up. And you're going to take this and saute it into a skillet. And let me tell you, the aroma smells so good. If you like pizza, the way pizza smells when it's baking, it reminds me of pizza all of a sudden when I'm stir frying it. And then once you get that to that level, then you're going to add water to it, and you're going to add the rice. But first you're going to put the rice in. It takes about a cup of rice. You're going to stir fry that rice with the other ingredients I've already talked to you about, and that's just going to heat the rice up. And then once you kind of heat it up for about a minute, you're going to add 2 cups of water, and you're going to bring it to a boil. And then once you bring it to a boil, you're going to simmer it for about 20 minutes until your rice is tender, and that's what you're looking for. So you do need to check on it every once in a while, and you want to stir it around and make sure that it's incorporating all the water and that you're keeping it where it doesn't stick or burn on the bottom. So once you've done that, you let it set for a little bit, and then you're going to add some corn to it. And if you don't like corn in it, you don't have to, but this is, to me, just gives a little twist to it. So you're going to add a 1/2 cup of corn, and you're also going to add a 1/2 cup of salsa. So there's so many salsas out there, so you get to pick your favorite salsa, and I chose one that's a little bit of roasted tomatoes, and to me it's a very tasty salsa. So choose whatever salsa you would like. So you're going to mix the salsa and the corn in with the rice, and then you're going to let it sit there just for a little bit, and then you're going to come back and you're going to add a 1/2 cup of cheese. Now I've already added a 1/2 cup because it's going to tell you need a cup of cheese. So I've added a 1/2 cup of cheese to this mixture, and this just gives it a little bit of cheesy taste. And then when you get ready to bake it, you're going to add the other 1/2 of that to the tomatoes. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and add the stuffing. And as you can see, I'm going to use like a spoonful to kind of push down in there. And I'm going to do all of them first. Then I'm going to go back because I want to make sure that I get a lot of good mixture when I eat that tomato. Now you should have your stove preheated at 350, so you want to make sure you have that ready to go. So once you have the stuffing in there, you're ready to bake those tomatoes. Now everybody's stove is different, but the recipe is going to say for about 30 to 35 minutes. So depending on your stove, you need to check them. And really you're just making sure that the cheese that we put on top is bubbly and that you can see that the tomatoes are heated up, because that's all you really want is to kind of heat it up. So I'm saying about 30 to 35 minutes. So I'm going to keep stuffing these tomatoes. And this is what I consider a vegetarian meal because we don't have any meat. Now you can take this and go a little bit further. If you wanted to make this and make it your meal, you could put meat into this stuffed rice tomatoes too. So it's really up to you on what you want to do. But I will say that once we get to the bottom, you'll see how much more I have left that you could also stuff inside those tomatoes. So I'm going to keep stuffing, and I'm going to go back and make sure that they are full, because I want to make sure when you chow down on that tomato, it is really good with all that rice mixture, and you get to taste all the good stuff. So, and I used, like I said, the green onions, and you could use other red onions. You could use different kinds, but I just thought it would give a little bit different look. Not all rice looking where it's all bland, but it gives a little bit of different look. And the salsa also helps it as far as gives it a little bit different textures to it also. And I use the cheese that it's going to tell you is like a Mexican style cheese, so that's what I used. If you don't like that, you could go with other types of cheese too, and it's still going to give you that same good flavor. But you do want to put that other 1/2 cup of cheese in there. And you can see I'm still stuffing a little bit more with it, and you can see that I still have a good bit of rice left. And I'm almost done. I got one more. I just want to put just a little bit more on there because that just looks like it needs to come just a little bit more on there. And so you just want to make sure they're covered really good. And if you can see, doesn't that look really good? I mean, this without the cheese, that just looks so yummy to me. We're going to add the cheese now. And they're just going to put a little bit of cheese on each one of them. This just gives it a little bit more flavor, a little bit more texture to it. And it's going to taste really good. If you like cheese like I do, hopefully you're going to really enjoy this recipe. And you see how simple it is. So when it's hot outside, you want to come in and fix something pretty easy and pretty quick. This is very easy, and it goes together very quickly. And as you can see, I'm going to keep putting my cheese out because I want to make sure all of it's covered with cheese. And so you're going to bake this, like I said, for 30 to 35 minutes. And you're going to make sure that it's bubbly. And you're going to see that once you take it out of the oven, you'll see a little bit of the skin of the tomatoes will just kind of peel back, and you'll know that they're tender and ready to be eaten as far as when you wait that time limit that I'm saying for 30 to 35 minutes. Now you look, this is a lot of rice left, so really I could even make even more. And that was just 1 cup of rice. So like I said, this makes 8 servings, but if you have more tomatoes and you've got more rice, you could always do this. These would do well. You could stuff them, have them ready in the refrigerator, bring them back out, and they would be ready to eat that evening if you want to do it early and have it ready for that night for supper. So put a little salad with it and you've got a great meal. So I hope you will come back and you will see these baked as far as our rice stuffed tomatoes and see what they look like. Frank's going to come back and taste these rice stuffed tomatoes, and I hope you're going to like them too. We'll see you back in just a little bit on Garden Delights. Welcome back to Garden Delights. We have Frank with us, and we're going to try that stuffed tomatoes with the rice, and I hope, Frank, you're going to like it. To me, it tastes really good.
It looks good. You know, I planted some of those.
I heard that, and
morning,
I really hope, I'm going to get your plate.
Variety.
I really hope, and I'm going to finger it just a little bit, Frank, to get it on there so it doesn't tumble everywhere. I heard how well you did and talked to everybody about those tomatoes, that I hope everybody's going to start planting very soon if you haven't already.
Let's see, this might be a balancing act here to
Well, I was going to say it might.
tomatoes roll, you know.
Exactly. That's the reason why I said be careful, and if it's too hot, let me know. Is it good?
It's good.
And you know that tomato taste gets into the rice?
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it pretty tasty in there. And you can see the tomatoes are they're just tender enough to come.
Tomatoes nice and soft.
Yeah, just enough to get it
Melts
soft.
in your mouth.
Very good. I'm glad you like it. And so you don't want to overdo it, but you do want to where it's tender, where you can eat it also. So you like it pretty good?
Mm-hmm. Good.
I think it's very tasty.
It's good.
And it really helps those tomatoes.
You can
I don't know
have
why.
tomato with it too.
I'm thinking it even makes the tomatoes a little bit sweeter as they kind of cook that way too. So I hope you'll check the website out and check out this recipe, rice stuffed tomatoes. Hope you've learned something about how to grow those tomatoes from Frank too also. And we'll see you next time on Garden Delights.
And if you have any trouble eating them, just call me.